Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are having a good week so far. Let's get ready with episode 16 of our Firebase 3 real-time chat app tutorial. Now today's video might be a little bit more advanced than the usual video, but hopefully it's going to be educational for some of you guys out there that are trying to get better at Firebase 3 and how to set up your database structures. And in addition to that, we're also going to go over how to further optimize our application so that you guys can reduce the overall cost of your Firebase monthly bill. So having said all that, let's go ahead and begin with the simulator and take a look at the application we have so far. I'm logged in as Jon Snow on the right, and in the middle I have my phone, so just ignore that for now. Anyways, the simulator, I can message anyone that I want. For example, messaging Hodor gives me this chat log. Hello, Hodor over here. Send. We get the message shown in the collection view above. Now, the last episode, we implemented this very nice interactivity between the collection view and the keyboard and this input area using an input accessory view. So a lot of good stuff, and hopefully you guys watch that. If you guys missed that episode, please click in the description. You should be able to find it as a link down below. Anyhow, let's begin with the actual problem that we have in our application right now. And if I go into messages controller, I want to remove these couple of print statements for the reload that we solved a couple of episodes ago. And I want to go to chat log controller now, and I want to include a print statement right here, right on line 44 right here. So inside of chat log controller observed messages, we're doing a bunch of message observation, obviously. And in here, I'm going to just print a statement of we fetched a message from Firebase, and we need to decide whether or not to filter it out. And then here we can actually say message dot text, maybe just for the message, and perhaps that's good enough, and a colon. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to run this application inside of the simulator. And remember, the simulator is logged in as Jon Snow, and I'm logged in as Ygritte in the middle, which is my phone. So I'm going to message Jon Snow in just a bit. Okay, simulator, I'm going to click into the chat log controller of Hodor. And you see this right here is the first printing of this message right there. And if I just enter a couple of spaces right there, and I'm going to message Jon Snow with my phone as Ygritte. So Jon Snow right there. And I'm going to say hi as Ygritte. So what's happening here is the simulator is printing out this statement down at the bottom for this hi message. And what I want to avoid is I want to avoid the constant fetching of messages. For example, another message. Hit send, and then hit another send. You see that this message keeps being printed out every time I get a message from Ygritte, but this chat log controller only cares about Hodor and Jon Snow currently. So why are we constantly fetching new stuff from Firebase, and why are we attempting to filter it out? Well, the real reason is because our database structure right now isn't set up to support individually observing the messages belonging to separate users. So that's the whole problem here. And I want to tell you that there is a proper solution to implement so that we can individually observe messages for different users. And I want to kind of illustrate to you what's going on inside of Firebase right now. And for this character of Jon Snow, which is this PIIW value right here. So inside of user messages is what I'm observing inside of, let's see, chat log controller, user messages here. And because I have a flat structure, which is just a flat list of messages. I don't know who these messages belong to. It could be Hodor, it could be Ygritte. I just don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement or introduce a subnode to this PII UID node, and it's going to just have the node ID for the person that I'm trying to send the message to. Now, it could be a little confusing to explain what the solution is, and it's actually easier if I implement the solution in Chatlaw Controller and then walk you through what it is actually going to allow us to observe. So inside of handle send right now, let's see, I actually want to get rid of this right there. And what I want to do is I want to expand this guy out again. Cool. I want to modify handle send so that I can introduce a new node underneath this node right here. So I'm going to do this rather quickly for user messages ref, and hopefully you guys can follow along. So what I'm going to do is user messages child from ID. This is the current reference. I'm going to append to it child and toID right here. And for the recipient message ref, in addition to user messages child of toID, I'm going to append child from ID. Okay, so if I run this now and I try to send a message to Hodor, I'm going to show you what the console looks like. So message here, ABC, send, and we get a bunch of nodes within other nodes right now. So that's pretty confusing. And to make it really obvious to you guys what is going on now, I'm going to, let's see, refresh that. And I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to send another message now to Hodor. And this will be something else. Let's see. I'm going to send him A, B, C, D, E, F, and we're going to see a new node pop in there. So send, and here is what we get. So instead of just the flat list of messages, we get the structuring where we are Jon Snow with this PII up here, and the HE belongs to Hodor. And then this is the actual message ID that references the message inside of the messages node. So that's how all of this works. And then we get the counterpart for Hodor, just in case he is also logged in and he wants to monitor the messages belonging to Jon Snow. So that's how this structure looks like now. And you notice how the message didn't appear in here. So if I type another message that says that right there, it gets populated inside of my database structures, but it doesn't show up. So I want to show you guys how to fix this right now quite easily. And if you go to Chatlaw Controller, observe messages, we want to observe, in addition to user messages child UID, we just want to append Hodor's ID right now, which is child user.id. So this is Hodor's ID currently because we are inside of this chat controller with Hodor selected. And to unwrap this a little bit more carefully, I'm going to go back up to the guard statement up here and say, let's see, what is a good, so I guess toID, since we're using that as our kind of naming convention here. The toID is just the user's ID right there. So I'll run the application again. You'll see that all the messages will kind of show up again inside of the Chatlaw controller. Now, currently this has kind of broken. The messages controller doesn't work anymore. So we'll fix that in just a bit. To get back to Hodor, we just click new message, go in there, and all the messages will show up again. So messages are back. Hurrah. And now this Chatlaw controller functions as it did previously. So that's pretty good, not so bad. Now the question is, how do we fix this messages controller screen? Well, what if I told you the solution was quite easy as well? And the trick here is, let me see how I want to show you guys what the solution is. So let me see if I can just do this. So if I just hit a return right there, what this means is that none of this code will execute, and that's what this warning says. So I'm just going to print out what message ID is. And then I'm going to show you what is currently wrong inside of our messages controller. So you see how I have this down here, this HE guy. So what it's doing is monitoring user messages and then child ID or child of UID, which will give us this right here. So it's giving us this, and what it actually needs is it needs to give us one level deeper inside of this node right here. So what I am going to do instead is inside of here for this message ID, this thing is actually the user ID. So that's what snapshot key is. And that's the problem here. So I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to now, I'm going to, let's see, create a Firebase database reference again. Let's see, I think I need database and reference, and I need to call child of user messages, and I need to call another child of UID, and then here I'll call a child of user ID, which is this guy right here, which is this down here. If I copy that and use Chrome right here, it's that right there. So I'm going from user messages to UID to this actual ID, and I'm going to observe event type using this cancel block guy, and event type will be child added, and use enter there, get the snapshot out of there. And I just want to print out the snapshot for you guys just to make it clear and obvious what the snapshot is. So remember, none of this code is working anymore because of the return statement there. And I suppose I might as well comment this out if it's not going to give us anything. So there it is, and I'm going to run the application now. And let's see what the snapshot is inside of this deeper level of observation. So we get this, this, and that, which is exactly these three nodes right here. And this means that I can actually fetch the messages that are inside of these individual nodes from the snapshot key right here. So what we need to do is we need to let message ID equals snapshot.key. And then we actually need to execute all of this commented out code. So let's get that code back, and I'll cut and paste that in there, erase this guy perhaps, and erase this snapshot here. So I'm gonna run the application now, and fingers crossed, we should get our messages back into our controller. So there it is again, and that's the fix for kind of optimizing our database so that we can individually observe these messages inside of our user messages tree. So if let's see, if I launch my phone, and let's see, I'm just going to bring back my phone here and try to run this. Okay, let's see what is going wrong here. Okay, I think I need to clean and run. So sometimes the Xcode doesn't like me plugging in my phone every once in a while. I just have to clean the project and it'll install on my phone again. So everything looks okay. And I want to launch this again onto the simulator. And then I'll show you exactly how the messages look like inside of both simulator and device. So I'm going to log into Hodor, or go into this chat log, and down here is what I want to kind of monitor. So remember previously when I was messaging Hodor as Egret, we were getting this print statement down here. So I'm going to show you that inside of the device now. If I message Jon Snow, so let's see, Jon Snow. So let me just scroll down here, and I'll say, yep, messages are good. So I'm gonna hit send. Okay, so this message shows up here, and you notice how the console didn't print out this unnecessary fetch from Firebase and try to perform that filter. So we fixed that issue. This means that we're no longer firing a request off to Firebase and trying to figure out what this message is. Okay, so that's the solution that we're trying to get at today. And so some of you guys might be asking yourselves why we need to kind of do this if all we have is just like a couple of users right here. And the problem is, once your system scales to like 1,000 users or perhaps 100,000 of users, the unnecessary fetching of all this data will add up rather quickly, and you're going to find yourself paying more than you have to support your Firebase setup. And if you don't have to pay for this, you shouldn't have to actually worry about this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest one more fix inside of chat log controller. And here we go. I'm going to remove this print statement now because I kind of just proved it to you that we don't unnecessarily fetch these messages anymore. And I want to also question here. Let me pose this question. Do we need to attempt filtering anymore? So back in a couple of episodes, we filtered these messages to check if the chat partner ID is actually equal to, for example, Hodor inside of this right here. And I want to tell you that we don't need this check anymore. So we don't need this check anymore right here. And we're just going to cut and paste the code over it. And the reason is because previously we had to check because we weren't monitoring the messages based on this kind of deep level node structure right here. And now that we're monitoring or observing it this way, we're kind of guaranteed that the message will always belong to the person that we're clicked into. So that's kind of why I can just remove that check. All right, and seeing as I do have a few more minutes, I want to go over something else inside of messages controller. And how about I actually take a look at line 57 and line 58. So to kind of give you guys a little bit of a refresher, a couple of episodes ago, we implemented this fix which introduced a timer on how often we reload the table for messages. So these two lines of code, I'm going to refactor this a little bit. I'm going to call this attempt reload of table. And inside of this new function that I'll create down here, private function, paste that in there. And here we go. I'm going to include these two lines inside of there and fix this with a self dot. And here we go. So this code, if I run this, still behaves exactly the same as before. Nothing has changed, I guarantee. There we go. We get Jon Snow and we get Ygritte and Hodor. So the thing I want to look at here is line 57. And we're actually constructing this entire messages array from the dictionary every time we stuff this message inside the dictionary here. And then we're sorting the messages. So I want to tell you that instead of doing this every time we get a new message from this observation, which happens quite a lot if your system has a lot of users and you have a lot of friends and you're constantly chatting. So what I want to do is I want to move this here and I want to cut that and I want to paste it inside of this handle reload table. And if I run the application again, you'll notice that it is going to give you exactly the same thing. So we get our messages, we reload the table, and everything is kind of sorted and showing up as part of the messages for Jon Snow. The reason why we can include it down here instead is because we don't need to reconstruct the messages array every time we get a new message. All we have to do is construct it the moment we reload the table, which happens here from this delayed timer call inside of this attempting of reload. So that is what happens, and we've saved ourselves a lot of computation because we no longer need to sort. And as some of you guys know, sorting is not the most efficient thing to do in the world. Even though sorting implemented by the Swift function is probably pretty efficient, you don't need to constantly call it if you don't have to. And that's kind of it in terms of optimization. So let me just remove these 2 lines here. Okay, and finally, as a bonus for some of you guys, I'm going to give you a tip on something that will help you guys in the long run as good programmers and good developers. So every time I have something that's more than perhaps 7 or 8 lines of code long inside of a function, I will always tend to refactor this into a method call on its own. So what I want to do is I want to refactor all of this stuff here. And this stuff is actually just fetching the message inside of the messages node using this message ID. So how do I plan on refactoring this? Well, I'm going to cut all this code here. I'm going to create this other private. Let's see, I think I took one too many lines. So I'm going to take this, cut that, and I'm going to include private function fetch message and attempt reload. Let's see, perhaps I just need to call fetch message with message ID. That sounds pretty good. And message ID will be of type string. I'm going to paste all that code which I just copied out previously. And here I will just say self.fetch, fetch message with message ID of message ID. And that will take care of the actual bloatedness of this observation method. And everything looks okay still. All right, that about wraps it up for today's video. Now, hopefully it wasn't too confusing and some of you guys were able to follow along. And hopefully some of you guys can now see how to modify your Firebase database structures to accommodate for more complicated scenarios inside of your application. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to hit that like button. It really does go a long way to showing how good the video is. And also make sure to hit subscribe to stay tuned for the rest of the Firebase 3 series. All right, in the next episode, I'll show you guys how to send images along with regular text messages. Really exciting stuff, so look forward to that. And furthermore, if you want to download the project for today's video lesson, you can click on the download link above. Follow me on Twitter at Build App. Finally, if you want to learn more about iOS development, click on the 3 playlist links on the bottom to get even better at iOS programming. That's about it, guys. Keep on coding, and I'll see you next time.